Hello, everyone. Welcome today, our great Erin Hahn, a wonderful Michigan Notable Book author from this past year. We're going to be talking with her a little bit about Never Saw You Coming, but obviously we want you all to read it, so we're not going to spoil it. But we are going to really delve into, her writing process and like what she does as an author. So just give you a chance to get to know Erin, who we all love at the Library of Michigan. So we're going to go ahead and jump right in. So my first question for you today is, give us a little background on yourself and how did you become a writer?
Well, like you said, my name is Erin. I am originally from Illinois, but I went to college at Northern Michigan University and fell in love with the UP. And my husband is also from Illinois, and we spent like 8 years trying to get back to Michigan. So here we are, and I've now lived here about 8 years. And yeah, I started writing after we moved to Michigan. I've always been an avid reader. When I was in college, I would write like in the back of my lectures, like chapters about my roommates and things, and like make up little love stories for us. But I always thought that being an author was like a fake job. It was just a job that like famous people did, things like they would have somebody write their life story, or like Jane Austen, or, I just didn't really think like real people could do it. And I think it wasn't until I got to Michigan and I had a little bit of time to not work 3 jobs, and I was raising my daughter. I have 2 kids, but my son was in school, and I kind of was like, you know what, I think I'm gonna try and see if I can write a whole book and just see what happens. And I wrote a book and I finished it, and then it was terrible. I wrote like 5 more, and all of them were equally terrible. Which is a lot of practice books. But since then, I was able to get an agent with my 6th book, which was You'd Be Mine. And that came out in 2019. And I've been releasing them ever since. So it was good that I had the practice, I guess.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's kind of encouraging to know that the first one wasn't, like the amazing, debut novel of blah, 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 like it's a process. It really is.
Yeah. And I'm the kind of person who like, I'll try something and I'll release it, but I'm not super precious about it. So it was like, I'm going to try to query this for a few months and get a bunch of rejections. And then I was like, okay, it's not working. Start another one. And then after that, I was like, just write another one, just write another one. And so I just kept going. Now I'm a little more precious these days than I used to be. But at the time it was like, just throw something at the wall and see what will stick. So
yeah, get that experience.
Totally.
Yeah, I love that. Well, I mean, you kind of talked a little bit, a piece of your writing process in the beginning. What is your writing process like now?
And now I'm far more organized than I was in the beginning, because you have to be when you have deadlines and contracts and things like that. So everything that I write now is 99% of it is under contract. So I have an editor that I've been working with my YA, and then also my adult. So I will give her a proposal and some ideas, and then we go from there. And I think really my process now is about 4 months, where I'll start making playlists, which I know is more of maybe a YA thing for people, but I make playlists for all my characters and all the scenes, and then I do a Pinterest board, and I fill a notebook with like different characteristics that I think my characters will have. I always have dual point of view romance, so it's always a male and female perspective. So I definitely will do everything for each of those, because I alternate chapters, and that way they each get their full story arc. And so it's a lot of prep ahead of time, and then I write rather quickly. But there's a good month or so of me like fiddling around with things that people would probably see as not writing, but for me it's a huge part of the process, all that prep work, so that I can like sit down and just go with it, and then let them speak to me and tell me the story. And then after that it's just your normal revisions and what everybody else does. So
yeah. I like that. I mean, the playlists and the Pinterest, you're creating that character, right? That you can see them, you can hear them before you even write them.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Especially because I do first person point of view. So I really am in the character's brain when I'm writing it. And so I really want to know every detail about them ahead of time. Otherwise, I feel like I end up having to rewrite a lot when it comes off as being inauthentic. They're just you can tell I'm not nailing that character. It sounds too, generic to be the real person who you met from
Yeah.
the rest of the story.
Exactly. I mean, that's the thing I hate the most. Like, drives me nuts in movies and books is when they do something that I'm like, that is not what the character would
Right.
do.
Right. No, it just doesn't make sense. That's maybe what you would do as the
Hmm.
author or the person who's writing the script for the movie, but that's not
Hmm.
what that character would do, especially in
Right.
YA.
Oh, it
So
drives me
much will
nuts.
have like, that's what an adult would do who has information about everything that's going on. But this particular person who's maybe
Mhm.
grieving or, anxious or whatever, they would do something totally different in that moment. And you have to really try to stay true to that. So,
Yeah. Oh, I think that's like one of the biggest sins in a lot of YA is that there are moments where you can tell that the adult author is writing. You're like, oh, this is no longer a teenager.
right. Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, I just had that. I had told you before we started recording that I just got some edits back, and my editor was so sweet, but she was like, I feel like in this moment, your character is really like got too much self-awareness, like they're for this 19-year-old, they really know what they're talking about. And I was like, right, because it's
Mhm.
me revealing it. I don't need to do that. They don't know that. Just because I do doesn't mean that they do. And I think that's,
Exactly.
definitely something that is, like you said, especially in YA, that's so important. So that's one of those little tricks that, YA authors really have to work with.
Yeah. Because it is hard. You're speaking in a different time and you're going back to what you were, 15, 20 more years
Yeah,
ago, right?
right. No, I know exactly. And you want to make sure that, you're letting your young audience discover it for themselves, right? You don't
Mhm.
want to be preaching at them. You want them to come to their conclusion on their own. It's not about
Mhm.
teaching so much as just like, we want you to experience this and see how this particular character goes through it. And maybe that will inspire you to think of something differently.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, this is a kind of a good segue is how did you get the idea for Never Saw You Coming? Because, it is a teen story. How
Yeah.
did that come about?
Well, as I said, I went to college in Marquette, Michigan. I actually met my husband there the first day of school. So in a lot of ways, Meg and Micah, not their story necessarily, but their experiences came from my own life, which I never do in books.
Mm-hmm.
Usually, I try very much to like keep it separate. But I happen to have been somebody who experienced um, having to come to kind of the crossroads of like your faith versus your religion or maybe your church.
Mm-hmm.
And Meg and Micah both encounter that in this book. And so in that way, it was very much born out of my own experience where I was like, this happened to me. And when I wrote the previous book, which was More Than Maybe, Meg was the character in that book. She was the side character. And I had a hard time writing the main character in that book. Her name is Veda. Not to like get lost in the weeds here, but
But
my
no, it's part of the
editor at the
process.
time, my editor at the time was like, you really should spend some time with Veda's best friend Meg, and maybe you can find more about her because Veda is very introverted. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to take a weekend and just kind of explore Megan a little bit. And or Meg, as we call her in the book.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did that, and I came out of the weekend with this huge backstory of just like, now she's going to go on this gap year, and she's this conservative, and she's grown up in a very, conservative family, and now she's going to, kind of explore her faith and fall in love and, meet somebody who challenges things for her. And my editor was like, awesome, let's write that one next. And I was like, I don't think I want to. Because that, I was like revealing big parts of me.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I absolutely don't want to write that story. I think that's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Who would want to read it? And do I want to relive all of that? And so I really fought it. I was like, well, we'll see, like maybe I can come up. And I offered her some other ideas, and she was like, oh yeah, that would be great after Meg's story. And I was like, okay. And so I ended up writing Meg, and then Micah kind of came out of the whole Me Too movement. So at the time when I started writing Meg, and I knew her pretty fully, who she was from the previous book and my brainstorming with her. And then Me Too came out about the time that I started drafting. And not to get into details, but a church that I used to attend had some things happen with their pastor, and it really broke my heart and just really frustrated me and made me question a lot of things. And it brought out this anger in me that really just like manifested in Micah. And he was just like that other half of me. Meg's like the curious, joyful, trying to figure it out. And Micah's like the bitter, angry, I feel betrayed kind of personality. And so then they complement each other surprisingly well. But at the time I was like, I guess I'm going to go all in on this now. I'm just going to not just tiptoe around it. And each time that we did revisions, it got deeper and deeper. And I was like, I'm going to tackle, the queer community. And now I'm going to tackle, what is going on with divorces and, just things that I felt like had been manifesting inside me. I was like, I'm just going to put it all in one book. This is my one chance to say it, especially with a secular publisher like Macmillan that would really get behind me. That's a once in a lifetime chance. So
absolutely.
We did it. We went for it.
I mean, that vulnerability, it paid off. And I mean, it's been speaking to people all across the state. So, I mean, I think we've all had that experience of trying to figure out, what is us and what we grew up with in our community, and what is something that we should hold on to and what needs to go, right? Like, that is such a coming of age tale, but I mean, I feel like we're still going through that even now. I mean, I feel like I'm going through that as a 35-year-old every day.
Yeah,
so
absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
And then that feeling of betrayal. I mean, I know that everybody has had that experience, whether it's in a religious community or not. So thank you for writing the book.
Thank you for reading it and not hating for it. Because that was the thing, is I was like, I'm pretty sure I'm going to make people mad. And so I've been so thankful that like more people have been loving it than hating it, or at least who are talking to me about it, which is fine. That works for me. You can hate it and
you can just be quiet about it.
Right. That's fine. You can talk about it someplace else.
That's your prerogative. In this, we kind of touched on a little bit, but what would you say is one of the major themes that runs through the book?
It's that whole idea of, coming of age and kind of letting go of things that have maybe been taught to you by, your family, your friends, your teachers, your pastors, or whoever, and creating a new sense of self from that, outside of that, where you can still have your beliefs, you can still have, your feelings and your love, and embracing all of that, but embracing it for yourself and not just taking the pieces that have been fed to you your whole life.
Yeah, making it your own.
Yes, absolutely.
That's beautiful. And for you, everyone's, it's a YA book, it's a romance. I mean, how would you really define this book?
Oh, that is really hard, because I remember when they even like gave me the cover, and it's the most adorable cover and it fits the story perfectly. It's like straight out of the book. It's like, it's illustrated, and it matches my other books, but also I was like, oh, is anyone going to take it seriously? Because it's so obviously a YA, and people look at YAs and they unfortunately will just like immediately discount them. And I feel like YA has some of the most important things to say in 2022. I mean, they're doing the work. These authors are not even just me. I mean, I'm talking about other authors are just really moving forward in a way that I feel like adults is not doing, and other genres are maybe not touching yet. And so that's hard, because you want to be like, it's a really cute YA romance, because at its core it really is. It's a love story between two people, but it's also coming of age, and it's also, I say at one point it's kind of like an alternative Christian fiction. I mean, because there is what we know as inspirational lit and or inspirational romances that I feel like it could hit on some of the subject matter, but it's absolutely not. And I feel like that community would probably not thank me for including my book in that. So
you never know. You never know.
You never know. They come across the first, F-bomb, and they're like, no, this is not for us. But it is hard to put it into a box, but I would say that it's definitely like a YA alternative Christian fiction ish coming of age romance. We'll call it that. We'll just go with the whole.
Real simple. I like it. Rolls off the tongue.
Yeah, I mean, we can just hashtag that, right? That's like
Right?
no big deal. Yeah,
Yeah, it should be good.
yeah, perfect.
Honestly, should be its own genre. I like it.
I would love to see it turn into a genre and just have
Mhm.
gobs more of them. That would make me
You
so
know what?
happy.
Maybe you've started it, right? You've opened the door.
When before it came out, I would have people messaging me, other authors, and they were like, I've got mine ready, so if yours takes off, and I was like, no pressure.
No, yeah, no pressure.
I hope that it does, but if it doesn't, I still want you to keep going forward with your book because maybe somebody else's will,
Yes,
so
right. Like it doesn't matter, even if my flops, please do.
yeah, yeah. Don't put everything on this little book.
No, yeah. Oh, I love that. I mean, I guess that's might be a part of what was the hardest experience for you, that pressure, but is there anything else that was really difficult in this whole, writing process, publishing, touring?
Well, I mean, the pandemic didn't help for sure. So, I mean, this was my second book that came out during the pandemic. And I think not being able to meet face to face, thankfully, because of working with you guys, I was given the opportunity to do that with the book tour, which was amazing to just be in front of people and get that feedback instead of, through a screen. But I think it was really intimidating. A lot of it was that, I put a lot into this book and I felt like I was risking a lot by kind of outing myself in this way. And I was afraid that it would just sink to nothing. And because it's a pandemic, and it kind of happened with my second book, not to nothing, but it definitely was harder to publish books during this time to get them noticed and to meet with readers and really market them. And so that was a big part of my anxiety. Like, I'm going to put all this out there, and then what if nobody ever gets to see it because we're in the middle of this pandemic? And understandably, people have got other things going on in their lives.
Right.
So, but thankfully that didn't happen. And I feel like it's almost been a year since it came out, and I'm still getting messages every day from people who are finding it. And I think that's the important thing to remember, is just that no matter what, people are going to find your words. If they're meant to, they'll find them. And so that's been proven this year. And it's been very reassuring to know that, like, it's out of my control, but it doesn't mean that nothing's going to happen. So
yeah, I love that. I mean, that's probably one of my favorite things about this author tour, is because, it was able to happen in the spring of 2022. Things were starting to open up a little more. And although these books came out in 2021, in the height of all this, we were able to provide an opportunity for authors to come and actually see people. And so it's been wonderful hearing, not just you, but other authors have said, like, it's just so nice to see people.
Yeah.
Like, be in libraries.
Yes, absolutely.
Makes a difference for sure. We kind of talked about your hardest part of the whole experience, but what would you say are your favorite characters, your favorite pieces of the work? What was really gives you joy about Never Saw You Coming?
Meg is one of probably my favorite character I've ever written. She's just very delightful. She's so joyful, and the way that she sees the world, it was extremely fun to kind of go back and experience the world through her eyes. Like, she's homeschooled. I mean, she lived in Ann Arbor, but she was homeschooled. And so she had a fairly small friend group. So like, when she first meets Micah in the story, she talks about how, like, this is my first adult friend, and I'm not really sure how to do this. And maybe I should pick him as the person to, like, Sherpa me into adult friendship, because she has a bit of a crush on him. But like, that whole experience of being out on your own for the first time and being like, I can eat whatever I want for dinner. I can buy whatever I want. I can do whatever I want. I can work and get a job and do all these things. And through her eyes was extremely fun. Like, she's one of those characters that I feel very, very lucky to get to write. The world is extremely dark at times, and Meg is like the counter medicine to that. She's just like joyful and wonderful. And so I think she came at just the right moment, and it was really fun to get to write her. Every time I dove back into revisions, I was like, yes, I get to be with Meg again, because she's just so light. And even Micah, with his grumpiness that he has, he's also has like this like soft heart, especially when it comes to Meg, which was a reward in itself, just to be able to like give her that too. So they were very fun to write. It was a huge joy.
Yeah. Do you kind of miss being with them as
Yes,
characters?
I do. I mean, especially since I've written, adult since then, which is
Hmm.
fun, but there's a sharper edge to adult, and
Hmm.
then I've written a far sadder YA that's going to be coming out in a couple of years. And so like that is to go back to the lightness of Meg and Micah. I enjoy it. I like to, I have the audiobook. I can't read my own books, but I can listen
Oh,
to them. And my daughter has listened to the audiobook like 50 times. And so
I love it.
so she'll be walking around the house with like her phone sticking out of her back pocket, and Meg and Micah are talking, and I'm like, oh, that's nice. It's like nice to revisit them and have that little bit like, oh, that's a cute part. And I'll kind of like sneak over by her, because it's not in an audio, it's not me anymore, it's a
Hmm.
story, and I get to listen to it and just imagine it as I see it. So yeah, so it's been a gift to just be able to go back.
I love it. It's like, when they come to visit, right? And she walks by and
Exactly.
it's like, oh, they just walked into the living room and you can
Yeah, yeah,
listen
they're
to
just,
them talking.
and when people, message me, or people, I get to do like book clubs and things like that, like to be able to keep talking about them still a year out is awesome, because I'm like, yes, I would love to talk about my books.
You're like, I'm not ready to leave them yet.
Right, let's dish on them. Or when people are like, what are they doing now? I'm like, let's think about it, like I think that is such a fun thing to do. So
I really wonder, you think there's some fan fiction that's been written about Never Saw You Coming?
oh, that would be fun.
I know,
I
I
don't
want to
know.
find
I'm
that.
afraid to look, because
I
I'm
know,
afraid.
right? You're like,
I
what if
mean,
they write something better than me?
right, right. Or, or maybe like slightly, more not work appropriate, I guess would be the,
Yes. That's probably honestly the more likely when it comes to
they're
fan
kind of
fiction.
my kids, and I don't know if I mean,
Yeah.
I hope so. That would be really wonderful. I love when people do that. I'm a huge fan fiction reader,
Oh
so
yeah.
I mean, I absolutely would be on board for that, but I'm not sure if I could read it, just because I would be like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm the mom.
Yeah, right. I love it. Oh my goodness. So what did it mean to you to be selected as the Michigan Notable Book Author this year?
Oh my gosh, it was amazing. Like I said, it was back, I believe, in December when I got the email from you, and
Mm-hmm.
um like I had to like sit down, because I never, you think of different goals that you have for your stories and what you want to do with your life, and every time that something happens in my author life, it's always like, man, I didn't even think to ask for that. Like I never even
Mm-hmm.
thought that was the thing. Um so that was exactly what this was I saw it, and I was like, what? I've never even thought about something like that, and just like the huge blessing it's been, like you said, to be able to tour, to go and like meet with you guys at the, I don't know what you would call it, the recognition night or whatever,
Oh, then yeah, the night for notables. Yeah.
for notables. I mean, that was just like, I've never gotten to do anything like that. You kind of feel like a kid again, where you're like at, your high school night, like it's kind
Yeah.
of like,
Like prom.
yeah, I mean, less fancy, but better. And
Hmm.
so, yeah, I mean, it was just like super fun to be able to continuously share Meg and Micah, especially since I was so nervous about the reception, to have somebody say like, oh, well, we found your book and we like it. And
Hmm.
that was huge. And also, I'm a huge fan of Michigan. I know that some of the Michigan notables maybe like have been here their whole lives, and they're like, oh, but like I said, we fought for 8 years to get back to Michigan. I just love this state so much. Most of my books take place in Michigan.
Hmm.
And so to be like Michigan notable is like, oh, that's amazing.
You're like my state.
I say I belong now. I
Right.
officially am a Michigander. Yeah,
I
that's
love it. That's so good. I know, I get you. I mean, me and my husband too, we're like, how do we get back to Michigan? It took a while. I was in Illinois and Kansas and Florida, but we got back.
yeah. And then you come back and you're like, we're never leaving again.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm like, I'm good. I'll take the winters. It's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
The summers make it worth it.
Yeah.
And I guess this is my sort of my chance or your chance to kind of say, hey, why they should read your book. What is sort of your elevator speech that you have for Never Saw You Coming?
I think for anybody, adult or a teen, who has kind of tackled that whole idea inside themselves of, this is how I've grown up, and maybe I think a little bit differently now, and I just am looking for the courage to take that step forward. I feel like, there's, like you said, it's not even just necessarily your faith, but there are all sorts of things that you come across as you age up into adulthood that you're like, I think a little bit differently about this now. And maybe you don't have the support of your family and friends, and maybe you're in a small town or whatever, and you feel like, I need to break out of this. And I feel like this book kind of gives you the courage for that. And I also think that if you're older and you've done that in your life, or you have maybe some trauma from the time of your life that happened, it's like a hug of a book to me. I feel like it's, you go through that journey, and it can be very healing, and it can be very, kind of give you that happily ever after that you were hoping for at the time, or that you're looking forward to. And to see it play out in a healthier kind of way is what I consider this book to be. I think that Meg and Micah are just like this great example of things going okay.
Yeah.
It turns out all right. It gets better. It's going to be okay. It's not perfect, but it'll be okay.
And I mean, that's something we need, especially after these last 2 years. Like,
absolutely,
we all need that.
Yeah.
I love it. And my last little thing is, what writers do you find yourself reading, and who would you say, okay, people read these authors, they're awesome?
So I feel like I've said this a million times over, but I hope that everybody in the state of Michigan starts to read these people. I've seen a couple who have messaged me because they're like, I found the books. I was going to just point, and I don't think they're on my shelf. I think they're in my room. But Syed Masood, he is an author, I believe, out of California. He also writes YA romance. I would say if you call mine like alternative Christian fiction, his would maybe be like alternative Muslim fiction, in the way that his characters identify as Muslim. They're YA romances. They're hilarious. They're charming. They're lovely. They're authentic to what, these characters' experiences are. And for me, I found them to be not just like, I don't want to say educational, because I hate when YA is phrased as educational. It's not meant to be that way. But I also think that it's revealing. It allows you to put yourself into somebody else's shoes. And when you're in the Midwest, we kind of have like a especially in certain communities, including my own, where we have, very few opportunities to get to do that. And this makes it more accessible. So Syed Masood is wonderful. Kathleen Glasgow, I think that her fiction is just, I say fiction like she has nonfiction. She doesn't, but yeah, she tackles so many incredibly powerful things in her books, and I just want everybody to read them. And then Raquel Gilliland, hold on.
I know. Some people's names, I'm like, okay, what was this author's name again?
She's I'll have to, I'm not going to remember it. Oh my gosh. Hold on, let me see. Is it behind me? This is the part you guys will have to edit out. I cannot for the life of me think about, her name is a two-parter, and it's lovely, and maybe I don't want to guess wrong. So, but she wrote How Moon Fuentes Fell in Love with the Universe. I know that part, and it's a really long name. So I highly recommend that. That's another one that tackles purity culture the same way that my book happens to, but it does it from like a Catholic perspective. And I thought that it was beautiful. And she also writes books with like lovely, lovely prose. She's a poet. And it's just, this book is not a poetry book, but it is just like reads that way in a way that you're just like, oh.
So lyrical.
Yes. It draws the pictures. And so those would be my few recs right now that I'm just like in love with.
Yes, I love it. Well, thank you so much for, sharing all this background about you as a writer, kind of insights into your book, and and giving us some good recommendations. Actually, I'm like, okay, I want to go read all those people right now. So
please do, and then tell me what you think of them, because
absolutely,
that's like been the best part of this, is getting to talk to people about books again, not just mine, just like books in general. So thank you so much 100%. For having me.
Oh yeah, we're so glad, and congratulations yet again.
Thank you very, very much.
Best of luck with the upcoming books.
So. Thank you.